welcome to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, Executive Director of the Community Career Center, a resource center located in Naperville for people in career transition. Career Center will bring human resource professionals and other experts together to provide job search tips to you as you search for your next success. Later on Career Center, consultant Betty Flasch will join me at the table to talk about the importance of making meaningful career decisions. But first, I'm happy to have Kevin Glover on the show to talk about goal setting and job search. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So Kevin, tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, what is it that you do?
I'm a corporate trainer. My advanced degree is in instructional design and training and development. I've taught all kinds of topics from customer service skills, communication skills, leadership, and staying awake on the job, so all kinds of things.
And I know you've done some things for us at the center as it relates to Microsoft Office and some other things, so you're great at what you do, so thank you.
Thank you.
Well, today what I really want to focus on is goals and setting goals and establishing priorities as you search, as folks are in a job search. What are SMART goals? Let's talk about SMART goals, because I know everybody hears about SMART goals. Let's just kind of talk about it, go from the S to the T. And
Okay, yeah. So SMART goal is an acronym to help people write better goals so that they're more focused, that everyone who's involved in the goal understands what's expected and what the outcomes are. So it's an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Mm-hmm. And so the point is that every goal should have these elements specific. It really is about what's going to be achieved after all of this work, right? All the tasks are completed. And so, you know, it answers all of the details of who's going to do what, when, why, how,
who, what,
exactly.
Why,
You got it. Mm-hmm. And so it basically helps people spell out what success is going to look like when all the work is done.
Mm-hmm. And is that so specific? Is that something they should start with first as you look at the SMART?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's where you want to go. What's going to be done when we're all, you know, what are we going to celebrate? What are we going to celebrate? And then A, is it attainable?
Or
is
measurable.
It measurable, thank you. Measurable. So measurables can help in a couple of different instances. One, it tells the person, hey, we've gotten there. Yay, now it's time to celebrate. But also, it can give points of references of how close you might be to the goal, depending on that measurable component. So in some cases, measurable is, did we achieve it or did we not? Yes or no. But in some cases, especially once you're on a job or you're responsible for the goals of a team, you might be measuring something like increase in sales percent. So you can see incremental change. So you can see whether or not you're on target for reaching that goal. Also in our personal life too, right? We set goals for weight loss and things like that. And then we go to...
Let me ask you this. In measurable, how should one track that?
There's lots of different ways depending on what the actual goal is. So I tell some of my students that they need to have the goal in front of them all the time, right? To stay focused, to keep an eye on whether or not they're tracking. The measurable component can also help people stay focused and on the path to getting it done. Also, so do some of the other elements as well that we'll get to in a second.
Okay. And so now A. Attainable,
achievable, actionable, depending on which flavor of SMART you're seeing. So it's got to require some action on the person's part. It can't be too easy. It can't be too difficult. It's got to be within their wheelhouse of skill sets, or they have the resources in order to gain those skills. If it's not achievable, then people will either write it off right away. I can't do this. We can't do this. What's the point? Or if it is achievable, it should be achievable and just enough out of a person's reach to have a motivational component to it, right? It should be somehow or another personal in a way that they have something within themselves to sort of fight to make that goal come about, right? We also can't rely too heavily on the actions of others. So if my goal is tied to you doing something first, that may not be the best goal because I don't have control over the whole thing. Right. Yeah. So that's A.
Okay. And then R. Again, depending on the flavor, it could be.
Yeah, it could be relevant, and I like relevant because it's got to pertain to what I do, where we're going. If I'm in an organization, it really should fit in with where the organization is going. It can't be some other goal that just doesn't pertain to anything, but it's something that I like maybe doing, right? We want to be in alignment with, organizational goals and personal goals. So it's got to be relevant. It's got to pertain to my gifts, my abilities, my system access. I mean, we have to really think about what I can control.
Right.
So it's got to be relevant. Go ahead.
And when I think about that too, it's, when people are looking for a job, it's important to be realistic and relevant, right? But realistic, and do you have what they're looking for? Are you just sending out 100 resumes hoping someone's going to bite on it, but you don't really fit what they're looking for?
Right. I'd love to win a gold medal at the Olympics, but I can't swim, right? So it's you gotta be real about yourself. Right. Maybe there's some goals that you need to set prior to, right? To be real about it.
Right. All right, and then time. S-T.
Yes. Some goals can go on forever until we set a stopping point. The time could be months, years, but it really needs to be a tight deadline so that we stay motivated, but it shouldn't be too far out because then you sort of lose focus and start doing something else. Another check of your goal is that if it's really short, then it's probably not a goal worth setting. You could just go and do it.
And what do you mean by short? Give me an example.
So that's when people start getting confused between tasks, things that we need to do, and goals. And when I was writing one of the courses, I took a look at the stack of goals that people had written, and they were basically list of tasks or their job descriptions. And that's not what goals really are. Tasks are short term, it's more immediate. Those are the things that, if you absolutely had to, you could knock them out. Right? Goals require a bunch of tasks in order to be accomplished. That. Right. So they're usually future focused, and so it requires a lot more effort and many tasks in order to be successful in most cases, sense. Right? Yeah. But when people are writing goals, they tend to mix up task and goals.
Right. Is it important to create like a timeline? I mean, let's say you're in a job search. So Monday you sit down and say, this is what I'm going to do, and kind of create it for that week, the list of tasks. And then what that end result goal is going to be by the end of the week. Yes,
you can set 1 week goals. To say, what is this week going to look like for me? What at the end of this week, what am I going to be able to celebrate for myself? Right, that I spent 3 hours a day actively searching, not goofing off on the internet, not being distracted. Actually working on my next position. And then at the end, you've got a measurable component in there too, right? 3 hours a day. Did I do that? And so in that case, I would sort of track. Did I do what I said? Was it realistic?
Right. So that's kind of like accountability too. So what are your thoughts about goal setting, accountability? It's important.
It's extremely important. That's why most companies have every employee set goals. It not only moves the organization or the person forward into the next thing, right? The next step, the next level, but it also gives everyone an understanding of what they should be focusing their energy on, where they should be focusing their efforts, maybe enhancing skills. And the more people know about those things, the more accountable we are. I've told my students in the past, if you got a goal that you find that's personally challenging and you need some help sticking with it, tell other people, right? Because people will check in, even casually. Hey, how's that?
Did you do?
Yeah, did you? Yeah.
I was just going to ask, is it important? I mean, it's important to be accountable to yourself, but then also.
Well, telling other people, sort of
helps,
puts it back on you, because some people you don't want to go back and say, well, no, I didn't quite get there.
Right, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And then when we talk about being focused, it's, creating those timelines, sticking to what you say you're going to do.
And, we do all kinds of things in order to make certain we do that. In some cases, we have to keep that goal in front of us. Sometimes it's a written goal. I don't know how true it is, but I heard that Michael Jackson, when he was writing and recording the Thriller album, that he wrote on every mirror that this is going to be the #1 album ever. Right? So it's important to have those goals right in front of you so that you're always sort of seeing it and actively working towards it, because it can't just be out there. It has to be an active thing.
That's one thing I know we say to our job seekers is put the date out there that you want, that you're going to be employed by, and what do you need to do to get to that point.
Right, light the fire to make certain that you're moving in that direction and doing everything that you can in order to make that happen.
Right, and then clarity. So just really establishing, a clear picture of what it is.
What does success look like? And in most cases that I've seen, people sort of fall down on that. So holistically, SMART will allow you to provide a lot of clarity in terms of what success looks like, and how do you know that you've gotten there? When do you need to stop, right? Instead of letting it sort of go on forever.
Right, and again, be realistic. That's really important.
Right, we can't do it all.
Right. Just real quick, what other challenges or obstacles do people face when they're setting goals? Is there?
Well, most of those things are sort of falling short. They're not picking things that they're not ready to make certain goals. They need to take a step back to look at their gifts, abilities, their skill sets right now, because maybe someone misled them to think that they had those that are better, better things. Sometimes people don't really think too much. What I found is that a lot of people don't spend enough time sort of reflecting on what they really want and what they really need. And so what a goal will do is it'll force you to sort of define those things, as opposed to just sort of sitting back, just sort of thinking in the back of your head, oh, I'm just going to go and do this.
Right.
And then not really have a focus or a pathway to get there. It's just sort of this pipe dream that you sort of think, oh, this is just going to somehow or another magically happen. But when you write it down, you have to see, these are the things that I have to do in order to get there. It forces us to do a self-assessment on whether or not we're ready to do those things, or maybe we need to back off of that goal and select another one in the interim.
Right, writing things down are so important. So
it is, because once it's there,
it's there.
It's there.
Yeah.
You said this.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. We are out of time, and I want to thank you for being on the show. Lots of great information on why it's important to set goals. So thank you. Now, don't go away. When we come back, learn how to make meaningful career decisions with consultant Betty Flasch. We'll be right back after these important public service announcements.
To find out how to protect your family, including your pets, in an emergency, please visit the ASPCA website or Tony LaRussa's Animal Rescue Foundation website. Be a responsible pet parent. Be prepared.
Welcome back to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, and joining me at the table is consultant Betty Flasch. Betty is the owner of Betty Flasch Consulting. Welcome, Betty.
Well, thank you, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's so nice to have you. First I want to start off by just learning a little bit about who you are. Tell me a little bit about your background.
I'm originally from Chicago, and I'm a talent management career coaching consultant. I've worked in the United States, and I've worked overseas for more than 21 years. I've lived in Spain, France, and the Netherlands.
Oh, and so you did this, you're consulting in the other countries as well, right?
I was working in corporate and in higher education, so I'm doing consulting now in the United States.
Okay. So how did you decide to kind of start this path in consulting, in the consulting role?
Well, I think part of it started with being a teacher many years ago and then leading into consulting. Some consulting I did do overseas, then working in corporate and higher education, and eventually realizing that I had sufficient skills and expertise to become a consultant. So that's how it started.
So one of the things that, well, the main thing we're going to focus on today is meaningful career decisions, which is so important. And, you know, let's start with like a step-by-step process. Why is that so important to make those meaningful decisions?
Well, I think, and Kevin alluded to it in your earlier session, and he talked about people setting goals, and sometimes people will jump into things. And I think it's really important in the first instance to define what is career management. So one has to figure out that career management is all the steps, the processes, the paths, the networking, the education, the training, everything that we've done up to a certain point in our lives. All of that together is management of a career. So then the question is, who's managing my career? Well, a lot of people think, you know, I can't move ahead because my boss is in that position. I have to wait until he or she retires. Or if I can't move ahead, I have to take a lateral move. Is that the best thing for me to do? Et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times we're making up excuses. The real person who's managing your career is yourself. You're the pilot, you're in the driver's seat, you're the pilot in the plane, however you want to call it. You are the manager of your career. Some things may get in the way of you trying to manage your career, but basically it's up to you. So you have to ask yourself, how am I managing my career? So when you get into the job search element, I think you need to step back and reflect, and Kevin alluded to this earlier, and really think, what am I doing and what have I done so far to get to where I am today?
When you're talking about making those decisions, are you making these decisions right out of college, or when do we get to that? When do people get to that point?
Well, it depends. So what I do is I work with people who are fresh out of college. I work with people who are sometimes in college. I work with people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s if they want to. And so the question is really, how do I make those meaningful decisions? So the first thing I would say is I ask people, look to the past. Take your resume that you have to date, take a look at it and say, how did I make my decisions up to this point in time? So I was thinking about this, and I came up with 14 different reasons why, and there's many more. There's 50, but some of them could be, and it depends on the stage of one's career. So a person might say, well, I took that position because of location. I didn't want to commute. My friends work there. It was my college major, or I wanted nothing to do with my college major, for example. Will it build my career? Do I love the industry? Would there be great training opportunities? Is there an excellent salary? Is it women friendly? Is there diversity? Is it union, non-union? Is it big? Is it small? Is it startup? All these things that you need to ask yourself and say, why did I make those decisions in the first place? And then come to a conclusion and realize, I made the decision here because of this, because of that, because of that. So for example, an early career decision of my own was I knew that I wanted to work in Europe. And so a job opportunity came along and I took it. I didn't know what my salary was. I wasn't quite sure where I would be. I didn't sign anything, but I got on the plane. And I did it. Because the goal at that time was live and work in Europe.
And so it could be different at different times in your life. When you're younger, right out of college, you know, you're open to moving and relocating and all of that. And then as you get older in your career, you may want to be a little more stable. You have a family.
Absolutely. It changes over time. So that's why in working with clients, it's so interesting to say, just hold on, take a step back, think about it and say, where did I get to? How did I get here so far? And then going forward, what makes sense?
Now, you listed 14 different things.
At least 14, yes.
Does it make sense for someone to, you know, maybe come up with a list of, you know, whatever, is it 14, is it 10? And then kind of stick to that list, kind of make that be kind of the base of what you focus on moving forward?
If there's a pattern, you know, you ask yourself, okay, so maybe I make up my own list and say I'm in a certain point in my career, maybe I'm mid-career, for example, or later career, and I look backwards and I say, why did I make those decisions at that point in time? Which ones were important then? But they may not be so important now because, as you say, you change over time and life sort of interferes, if you will. Life sort of gets in the way. So while you're still in the driver's seat, you have to take into consideration a number of other elements. So it may change. The commute might be very, very important to you now. The 401k and a matching 401k from a company might be very important. Diversity might be very important. So it just depends. Or it might even be expatriation. A person might say, one of my goals is to do have an expatriation opportunity. It just depends.
All right, what about taking the time and opportunity to take stock?
Oh, good Lord, yes. Yes, well,
We can spend a lot of time on that, right?
No, but it's true. And I think, when working with clients, a lot of times I'll have a person come in and say, well, here's what I'm looking for, Betty, and just help me with it. And I'll say, okay, that's very nice, and I really appreciate that. Tell me about yourself, tell me about what you're thinking, and why you've come to that particular conclusion. And over discussions, orientations and such, it will actually be the fact that the person is not so much interested in the 9 to 5, is actually really interested in managing a team, and is actually interested in an entrepreneurship or a startup position. So a lot of times we kind of think we want to go, okay, so I'm no longer in this position, so now I'm going to jump into the job search, go full speed ahead, but I think you need to step back and take stock. So again, look back at your own resume and try to figure out what were the patterns. Ask your friends, ask your family, ask an objective observer, what is it you see about this? Where are the patterns if you can't see them yourself? Okay. Another way to take stock, which I highly recommend, is to do some kind of an assessment. So an assessment, there are many online assessments out there, and a couple I've noted down here. You could do the MBTI, so the Myers-Briggs. You can do Strengths Finders. You could do Hogan, and not everyone is aware of the Hogan, but
tell me a little bit about that. That's not
well, the Hogan would give you, the Hogan assessment has 3 or 4 different levels, but one of the levels that's really important is for those going into leadership roles or already in leadership roles. So it could be a new manager, it could be a manager, a mid-level manager, for example, or someone going into a higher level leadership role. And the Hogan is a very interesting assessment because it will tell you where the potential derailers are for you as a leader. And it's a good idea to pay attention to those derailers. I mean, it gives you some assistance about how to manage potential derailers and how to avoid them. But that can be very interesting. Another one is the Berkman assessment, and I would also mention the IDI, which is the Intercultural Development Inventory. And this one tells you how you approach difference. So in this world today, there's so much difference, you have to understand, how do I approach it and how would I manage it, whatever difference may be. So it may be that you're in an organization that has people from many different parts of the world, or speak different languages, or religions, or ways of life, or perspectives, or whatever it happens to be. And that sort of inventory can help you to understand where you are on the spectrum today, and then maybe how you might want to modify that over time, or realize that, maybe I wouldn't fit in this particular company, but I might be a better fit in that company.
So it's important to have that kind of revelation.
It's a good idea to do these assessments, not that I'm trying to, make some money for those companies, but I really do believe that They're it's important in taking stock.
Anything else on taking stock?
I think that's enough. That's
Okay.
plenty. That's a lot for a person to take stock on.
So let's talk a little bit about creating a career legacy. I know you talk about that as well.
Well, we've just been talking about taking stock and preparing and going forth and maybe getting into the job search, jumping into that and all the wonderful things that Kevin mentioned in his presentation. But I would say with a legacy, some of us might be thinking, okay, short term, I'm looking at this particular position and I've got my job search tools and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm being accountable. But am I thinking 10 or 15 years ahead? And we can't always plan that far ahead. We never know what's going to happen. Life interferes. We know this. But you could do a bit of a legacy resume, I call it. And that's an exercise where you have your resume on the screen in front of you. And just below your name, you push the enter button. And so all of that information about your most recent job and your other job history goes down. So what are you left with? A big blank space.
A lot of white space.
Yeah, a lot of white space. And you get writer's block. You say, my God, what am I going to put into that space? So then you start filling it and you think to yourself, what would I really like to do? What is realistic? What is potential? What am I starting to become interested in? I've been reading more and more about this type of industry, et cetera, et cetera. The big question is, what would I regret if I didn't do it? So you have to kind of fast forward a lot. Think of yourself as the little lady or the little man sitting in a chair when they're 85 years old and thinking, I regret that I didn't do that.
Right.
And you don't want those regrets if you can avoid them. So it's a bit of a, thinking, what is my legacy going to be? You take all those things that you've written down, you save it, you leave it alone for a week or so, you come back to it, you go back to it, you look at it again. Maybe you're going to add some more words and such. You save it, you go back and forth a little bit. After about a month, you start giving it to maybe family members, trusted family members,
Right.
objective listeners, maybe some friends, and let them comment on it. Eventually, you refine it. It's like a brainstorming session for yourself. You refine it, and maybe you've got 2 or 3 key items in there, and you say, okay, in the bigger scheme of things, these are some of my important goals, and they're going to, if I do this right, these are going to be part of my legacy, my professional legacy.
I like that. So, and it ties to what we were talking about earlier with goals. So you put it
Absolutely,
there.
absolutely. So
And
that
so you
don't
still
these regrets.
have your resume below that, but this is just
Exactly.
your-
Yeah, it's your little part
little
there,
part.
and you don't send it to anyone.
Right,
It doesn't go
right.
to a potential employer.
Right.
But it's your little worksheet, and you can pull it out every 6 months or so and see,
Right.
should I refine this a little bit? But it's your
yours.
worksheet.
Yeah, I like that a lot. We should do a little workshop on that.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay,
there you
I'd
go.
be happy to.
All right, what about going forward and making better decisions?
Well, yes, how do you go forward? This happens this can be a person at the beginning of their career, the mid-level of their career. Again, I would say, here's another opportunity, and that is, think about the patterns that you've had so far. What has been the good, the bad, and the ugly? What have I enjoyed? What have I not enjoyed? And one way to do that is to go back and, again, this is another type of resume. It's what I call the historical resume. You've got your resume on your screen, your public one, if you will. But this one you're going to save for yourself, and in different font, different color ink or whatever, you start to put in for each single job, you add the teams, the team projects, the team names, the activities, whatever it is that you worked on in that particular job that had meaning for you, that you want to remember. Things that maybe you overcame some obstacles, things that you'll never do again, that you learned from.
Right.
What worked, what didn't. Any other details that you can think of. And then you want to think, how did I feel after each one of those efforts? Okay, and that's a good idea to review before you take your next role. But you add to it over time, every time you take a new role in your company. So that's your historical resume. You save it, you keep it for yourself.
I like that.
But it's like a little job diary, if you will, in that sense.
Wow,
So
that's very nice. We're actually out of time, so
Oh, my
I
goodness.
know.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you back on.
Okay.
So thank you so much for being on the show. From decision making to creating a career legacy, very valuable information for our viewing audience. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
I also want to thank Kevin Glover for joining me on this month's edition of Career Center. And to our television audience, if you are unemployed, underemployed, or seeking a career change, visit the Community Career Center at 1815 West Deal Road, Suite 900 in Naperville, or search us on the web at www.communitycareercenter.org to learn more about the resources available to you as you search for your next success. Thanks so much for watching.